What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here, of course, to preview even UFC Vegas 32. We got TJ Dillashaw making his return after 2 years out of the cage. Obviously, he tested positive for EPO back in February of 2019, and he obviously had a 24-month suspension, retrospective or retroactively to his loss to Henry Cejudo. If you remember back in January of that year, obviously for the lightweight title that he moved and cut down an extra 10 pounds for. So he's coming back. He's had a 2 years out of the cage. It's going to be really interesting to see how he comes back tonight, how he's been using those 2 years. If you look over his Instagram, it's been absolutely shredded, coming into this fight, and hopefully he's clean. He, seemingly is clean now. It looks like, at least from a perspective, that it was just mainly for the extra cut down to 25 that he thought he'd have to use those methods to get down to that weight and use certain prohibited substances to get down to 125 rather than a current issue throughout the whole of his career. But it's going to be interesting to see tonight, his first fight back since being clean, just how he performs. And of course it has been 2 years, so the game's changed a lot. City car kicks are a lot more proactively used in 2020 and 2021 as they were back in 2019 and 2018. So the game's changed a little bit, and obviously this division's changed a lot as well. We've got now obviously Aljamain Sterling at the helm of the division. He's going to be looking to defend his title against Petr Yan. Obviously you got Cory Sandhagen tonight, who's an upfront contender. If he wins tonight, he's definitely going to be the number one contender. To see who he's going to face. Obviously that fight looks like it's going to be in October now between Yan and Sterling. Obviously Cody Garbrandt is coming off that loss to Rob Font, so the landscape of this bantamweight division could be one for TJ Dillashaw. If he gets a win tonight, he could step straight back into a title bout. It's good that he hasn't gone straight into a title bout after that layoff as well. He could have easily instead, right, I was the champion when I got suspended. I had the right to right my wrongs and almost come back and challenge for the belt immediately. But he said no to that. He's got a 5-round fight tonight again. He's a veteran for these 5-round fights now. It's even with 2 years off, you maybe would have wanted him to have 3 rounds in there, a little bit of an ease in, back to his career and back to fighting. But of course, that's not the way in MMA. He's been given someone right at the top of this division and someone who could give him a whole load of problems. So let's have a look at the tail of the tape, of course. 14-2 against 17-4, 5'11 versus 5'6. So a huge advantage there for the height in terms of Sandhagen. Who's obviously coming off the back of 2 phenomenal wins, which we'll talk about in a minute. Both of them came in at 136, of course. 3-inch reach advantage there for Cory Sandhagen, of course, and 1.5 advantage in the leg reach as well. So Dillashaw might have he's going to have a tough job in his hands, depending on what game plan he's going to come with. Of course, he's got fantastic striking. He's okay on the ground. Of course, he's got some, very good wrestling and transition to get the fight from the feet to the floor, of course. And we saw how that worked for Aljamain Sterling, of course, in the UFC Apex this time last year. Aljamain Sterling rushed Cory Sandhagen, got him to the ground, and obviously took his back and then submitted Cory Sandhagen, of course. And that saw Aljamain Sterling become the number one contender and eventually fight for the belt, of course. Since then, Cory Sandhagen went on and finished Marlon Moraes at UFC Fight Island with that fantastic stunning will kick in the second round. He dominated that first round convincingly as well. And then, of course, he fly kneed Frankie Edgar back in February. So Sandhagen bounced back from that win, from that loss in phenomenal fashion with 2 fantastic highlight reel wins. And he looks like the next guy to be fighting for the title. This one, if he gets the win tonight, will be the biggest win of his career by far. He'll build a 3-fight win streak. Of course, he would have defeated 3 champions in a row. Obviously, Marlon Moraes not a UFC champion, but a World Series of Fighting champion, of course. So to have that on his resume, of course, Frankie Edgar, the former lightweight champion, of course, that's big money on your resume to lay claim to a title shot. Obviously, right now it's between him and Rob Font. Obviously, Rob Font beat Cody Garbrandt this year, so it's only those 2 that are eyeing the next sort of spot for the title, unless we get somehow a trilogy from Yan and Sterling, which I don't anticipate seeing, but we never know. So yeah, Cory Sandhagen, of course, that 5-inch height advantage for him is huge, and of course, we saw the line he lost last February, of course, in this year. It's gonna be interesting to see what his game plan is coming into now. Of course, back in the Apex, he's got a win there now. Obviously, he beat Frank Edgar in the Apex, so there's not that sort of that cloud over his shine from the Aljamain Sterling loss, which was in the same arena. He's going to be coming into this with a lot of confidence, and that's his only loss in the last 7. Well, he was on a huge streak before that, but in his last 7 at least, he's 6-1. Beating the likes of John Lineker, Sancho, Batista, Yuri Alcantara, of course. So he's got some huge wins on his record, and as we mentioned, tonight is the biggest one to have a look at the rankings, of course. Aljamain Sterling Petian, it looks like it's going to be happening at UFC 267 in October on Fight Island, so that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira will be the main event of that bout, of course. You got Rob Font, you got Aldo in the mix, of course. He's fighting Pedro Munoz in a week or two. Of course, early August, of course, on the Nunes card at 265. We've got Cody Garbrandt coming off that loss to Font. He's yet to be matched up, but it looks like he might be maybe going down to 125 for Brandon Moreno. Personally, I'd like to see him fight Frankie Edgar. And obviously, you got Moraes coming off a loss. You got Frank Edgar, Bet Pedro Munoz, you got Dominic Cruz in the mix, and obviously Merab Tadalishvili, a prospect. And it'd be interesting to see where he is. Should Aljamain Sterling still be a champion in a year or two when he's probably knocking on the door of title contention, probably back in the 2022. It'd be interesting to see how those two work out, because obviously they're training partners and good friends. But I say it every time there's a bantamweight belt on. It's the best division in MMA. In Bellator, obviously, you just seen James Gallagher and Patchy Mix announced. It's the best division. Every fight delivers. I don't remember the last time I saw a boring fight or a fight where you almost go into cruise control in the bantamweight division. Obviously, we had Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinho, a couple of weeks ago. Fantastic fight. Maybe a little bit lopsided in terms of the spectacle that it was. Obviously, Sean O'Malley came up with quite a comfortable win, but the toughness of Moutinho made that fight a very enthralling and very, it's one of those fights you don't want to be turning off because you don't know what's going to happen next. Moutinho could have got one of those strikes in there and finished Sean O'Malley. But it is the best division in mixed martial arts at the moment. Obviously, you've got the lightweight division with the star names, of course. But, name for name, the lightweight division wins. But I think the skill gap in this bantamweight division makes it, the most exciting division in MMA. And it's going to be another night tonight of fantastic bantamweight action, I believe. Prediction-wise, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, we're going to find out in the first round just where TJ Dillashaw's at. He isn't the young gun he was back at 217. He's 35 years of age now. So age, he's probably in his prime, but he's in the latter stages of his prime for a year or two left at the top. You could say, obviously, Dominic Cruz is 37, 38 he must be now. So, you can see where that's at. Obviously, Henry Cejudo's retired. If Dillashaw wins tonight, and becomes bantamweight champion, you could definitely try and rebuild that fight. Cejudo's still in his prime, you could say. And I'm sure Dillashaw's itching to get that one back because of the way that fight unfolded for him as well. Obviously, you got the Cody Garbrandt rivalry that's still probably alive for TJ Dillashaw. You can watch that a third time with what those two bring. Obviously, Dillashaw is 2-0 up, but Garbrandt's coming off that loss. And if TJ loses tonight, he could easily put that fight up again, in my opinion. I like what Sandhagen's doing for his size. It's amazing how he makes that 135-pound limit. You could definitely see him as a featherweight in the coming years. How old is he? He's only 29, so yeah, he's still coming into his prime. He's going to be his prime, probably within a year or two. He might be bantamweight champion by that point as well. You could definitely see that happening. He's such a talented guy. Now the fact that he's getting finishes on his record, he's getting significant names on his record now. You can see the trajectory of his career going to the next stage there, which is the championship, of course. But I was thinking of a fight with him, maybe against Max Holloway. Same height, fight against the likes of Brian Ortega, the likes of the Korean Zombie, Yair Rodriguez. They're all fantastic fights for Cory Sandhagen, but of course his focus tonight and within the near future is that bantamweight crown. So yeah, I do think, I want to say Sandhagen gets the job done, but I'm not entirely confident on that. I think Dillashaw, will come back with some venom in him, and you can definitely see either one of these getting finished, and you can equally see it being a 5-round war between the two. These are two fantastic competitors. If it does go the distance, I do see it in Dillashaw's favour. I think Sandhagen, his best chance of getting a win is probably a finish, maybe utilising those card kicks, of utilising his distance, and maybe catching Dillashaw in the same way called Edgar, because obviously that height advantage that he does have, Dillashaw will have to come in and use his strikes by forcing his way into range, and that could get him caught with an uppercut, an overhand right, a hook, a knee maybe. You don't know, but it also sets up the takedowns very nicely for Dillashaw as well. So it's just one of those bouts that you can't really predict the way it goes. You just have to see it unfold and enjoy the fights that we're going to get, and the war that we could potentially be witnessing tonight. Now, of course, that does move on to the flyweight division. This card obviously lost its co-main in Aspen Ladd and Macy Chiasson in the bantamweight division, in the female bantamweight division. That is, I'm gutted we lost that fight, because it would have put into perspective the next title challenger perhaps. And of course, when Miesha Tate's out, obviously Miesha Tate fought last week, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Just to recap that, because obviously I've not done a video since that fight and that weekend took place. But to keep on tonight's card, we've got Macy Barber versus Miranda Maverick. Now, these are two prospects, two contenders that have quickly risen up through the flyweight rankings. But of course, Macy Barber's had a couple hiccups here and there now. 2 losses back-to-back against Roxanne Modafferi and Alexa Grasso. 2 decision losses, of course. If you remember, against Roxanne Modafferi, she did, I believe, tore her ACL in that fight at least, and she kept continuing the bout for the extra 2 rounds, because if I remember rightly, it was 2.5, 3 minutes into that first round on that Conor McGregor-Cerrone card that she tore her ACL, and she didn't look the right since, but she used a toughness, and she got plaudits for that. And then obviously Alexa Grasso is someone who everyone's pretty high on as a future contender and maybe a future champion. You see Brandon Moreno, the first Mexican champion, of course. Alexa Grasso will certainly be using inspiration from that and looking to follow that pattern and follow the lead that Brandon Moreno has now put down, especially in that 125-pound division as well. Grasso is certainly on the come up, but Macy Barber, she's called the future. She needs a win tonight, and she's up against a very tough wily veteran. Well, I say wily veteran, she's still a prospect in herself, but it feels like she's been here a long time, because she's making it look very easy at the moment at 9-2. To take a look at the tape, 11-2 versus 8-2. I don't know why it says 11-2. I've messed up the tape there, but 9-2, 8-2, 5-3 versus 5-5, 135-pound division, of course, 65.5 reach there for Maverick, only 0.5 ahead of Macy Barber, and they've got identical leg reach. So it is a very close bout between the two, and obviously Miranda Maverick is only 24, Macy Barber's 23, so these are still very young in their careers, and they are fantastic competitors. It could be obviously Miranda Maverick. She's on this fantastic win streak. Beat Gillian Robertson in her last fight. Liana Jojo, she beat by Dr. Stoppage with some brutal elbows at the back end of last year in October. She beat Pal Gonzalez in Invicta prior to that. So she's got some good names on the record, and she's certainly coming up on the fast pass, you could say, with how well she's doing. She's also studying on the side as well. I think she's doing a PhD, if not a master's, definitely. So a lot of inspirational qualities there from Miranda Maverick. The fact that she's balancing both sides so finely, and she's these two are definitely going to be the future of this division. You're going to see them here in the next 6 years, I reckon. But for Macy Barber, that is more of a question mark than it is for Miranda Maverick, just because of the fact that lost tonight to Maverick for Barber would be 3 losses in a row, and sometimes in the UFC that means your contract might be terminated. You might have to go back, rebuild yourself up, and come back in 3 or 4 years, similar to how Brandon Moreno has done it. Also, he got cut from the UFC, came back, and he's now a champion. So there's definitely a future for Barber in the UFC. It might just be a fact of maybe go away if she loses tonight, get some confidence back, get some experience back into you, and when you're 27, 28, let's see where you are, because obviously she is a talented fighter and still very young. She's got a long way to go in her career. But yeah, I'm hoping she gets back into, if she doesn't get back into the win column, at least puts on a performance where we go, she has to be in the UFC. she's up against Miranda Maverick. It's not going to be one of those fights where we saw it with McGregor and Poirier, and of course that's on a different magnitude. But you're tearing down McGregor, but you're not really giving tearing down McGregor and not giving Poirier the respect he deserves for being a fantastic competitor. It's all, McGregor's finished rather than Poirier is really good. Equally, it's, the people that say McGregor are finished, equally not giving him maybe the respect he deserves. So it's one of those ones, and it comes with the sport, doesn't it? Especially with competitors, and when you get that following, and maybe a following of people who hate you as well, it can be very, very easy to undermine people's achievements and value, what they bring to their game and what they bring to the sport. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this fight. It's a shame it's so far down the card, as is of course the battle with MMA Twitter. You've seen these two on the timeline, Adrian Yanez and Randy Costa. They've been back and forth for what feels like 6 months now. These two are fantastic on Twitter, and they understand that aspect of the sport, getting MMA Twitter on the side. Sometimes MMA Twitter can be very questionable at times, but if you're a fighter and you want to build up a following, going into that sort of market and branding, it can be valuable for you. Of course, you've got Mr. Dr. Pepper versus Reese's Pieces, and it's just going to be one of those fights. Of course, this was meant to be on the prelims, but fortunately for these guys, because we lost that co-main event, they got boosted up to the main card. And of course, I think this is the people's sort of main event tonight. Obviously, Yanez coming through that Contender Series, if you remember, got that win against Brady Huang in fantastic fashion, and since then, he's got 2 fantastic finishes on his record in the UFC against Gustavo Lopez and Victor Rodriguez. So he's very exciting, 27 years of age, still very young, coming into his prime in the next 2 or 3 years, you could say. And a win tonight over Randy Costa would be fantastic. I'm expecting a great spectacle tonight between these two. Obviously, sometimes, there can be a question of being too nice with your competitor, with the guy you're fighting. How can that play with the mental games, the mental side of your mentality going into the fight? If you're too nice to someone, how can you perform your best? There can be a question of that. We've seen it again, to reference Conor McGregor. He was very nice going into the Cerrone fight, had a fantastic performance. There's a lot of people saying you're being too nice. Then we saw the I guess, quote unquote, the real McGregor, the old McGregor against Poirier, and that undermined because he was too anxious up, too violent, too aggressive in his approach to the fight, you could say. Obviously, fans prefer that sort of antagonizing aspect of the mental games. That you want to see a back and forth between someone. You want to see 2 fighters who don't necessarily like each other and want to almost kill each other in the octagon. But tonight we're going to see 2 people, I think, having fun in the octagon, and it's fantastic that this one hasn't got a crowd, because we're going to be able to hear what they're saying to each other in the octagon. I reckon we're going to hear some funny sound bites tonight from both Yanez and Costa. Of course, these two are going to, once that bell goes, it is down to business. Both of them are fantastic fighters. Yanez 13-3. To look at the tape, of course, 13-3 against 6-1, 5-7, 5-9. 3-inch reach advantage there for Randy Costa, and half an inch advantage in the leg reach as well. So yeah, this is going to be a fantastic battle. Obviously, Randy Costa beat Johnny Newsom and Boston Salmon since making his UFC debut. Lost to Brandon Davis in his opening fight, of course, so he's 2-1 in the UFC. But yeah, this is going to be a fantastic fight, and MMA Twitter is going to absolutely love this. We're probably going to get some memes coming out of this one. It's just a shame that it's on earlier in the night. You'd probably want this as a co-main. If you're a fan of either of these two, or if you're just a fan of mixed martial arts in general, because these two are going to bring an absolutely fantastic fight. I do see it go to 3 rounds. And as I said prior to this, I just expect these two to go in there and have fun, and put on a spectacle for the fans who are watching. And I think there's a couple in attendance. I know Dana White put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago saying that degree fans in the Apex, or a certain number, whether that's 100, 200, who knows. But there's certainly going to be a daunting aspect in the UFC Apex today, with the lack of atmosphere, similar to how we've had it for the past 12, 14 months now. But for this fight, I think it works perfectly. Then, rather than having 10, 15,000 people in the arena, drowning out the sound of these two gladiators going to battle. Now, we have to talk about, obviously, last week, UFC Vegas 31. What's next for Islam Makhachev? Of course, he beat Thiago Moises in very dominant fashion. First round was nip and tuck, but since the from the second round to the fourth, where he got that submission victory. Of course, Makhachev was certainly in control of the fight. So what's next for him? Of course, he's now moved up to the top 5 in that division. I think Rafael dos Anjos probably is the fight to make. There's bad blood, or at least competitive blood between the two, with their fights previously breaking down. Of course, Rafael dos Anjos put out this week, he'd fight is Makhachev at UFC Fight Island. And of course, bring Khabib out of retirement. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Khabib's, very, very, cemented in his opinion on his retirement. He doesn't see anyone or see a reason for him to need to come back or want to come back either. And he seems very happy with where he's at, being a coach, and fair play to him. He deserves to not be pressured into making a comeback if he doesn't need to. But for Makhachev, that fight's fantastic. The fight with Tony Ferguson that's been, talked about is fantastic. Obviously, the coach of Makhachev is Khabib, and of course we were meant to have Khabib Tony 5-6 times. Makhachev has come out and said, let me finish the business. You could definitely see that happening. Tony Ferguson's a huge name, but he's also coming off a few losses now. And obviously you got the likes of Michael Chandler, who I want to see up against Justin Gaethje. That's the fight permanently, in my opinion, that's the fight to make. And it seems like the last week there's been some movement, and that's the way that the lightweight division is going to be going. We're going to have Gaethje versus Chandler, and of course in December we're probably going to have Poirier versus Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title, and those are two fantastic fights. So for Makhachev, it's between Hooker, RDA, and Tony Ferguson. Personally, for me, I'd like to see the Hooker fight, just because I'm a fan of Dan Hooker. He's coming off that loss to Michael Chandler, and that win for Chandler then obviously got him to a title fight. Maybe not because, based on the merit of that performance, of course, but of course, Poirier was probably first in line, but he chose the McGregor fight, and rightfully so. It played out fantastically well for him, and he's still going to get his title shot in December. But if Makhachev beats Dan Hooker, we saw the Poirier performance against Dan Hooker. It was fantastic. Hooker is someone is going to bring a lot of fun to the cage, and is going to be very tough to beat. And for Makhachev, that would be a fantastic fight. Someone who's very good striking. He trains with middleweight champion Israel Adesanya from City Kickboxing, who are fantastic gyms. So Dan Hooker versus Makhachev would be a great fight, as with Makhachev versus RDA, and of course Makhachev versus Tony Ferguson. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which of those three would you pick, or would you pick someone like Chandler? Of course, Makhachev did call him out, but I think Gaethje is the fight for Chandler right now. Two former champions in World Series of Fighting and Bellator. Meeting up in the UFC does have a special ring to it, especially, they both have fantastic highlight reels, fantastic all-round attributes, great knockout power, great wrestling, although we don't see too much of Gaethje's wrestling. So yeah, I do think that's the fight to make. And of course, Miesha Tate, she made a return against Marion Reneau, who was retiring on the night. Marion Reneau put on a good performance, but Miesha Tate was certainly the victor in that one, and came off and looked the better of the two. She looked like someone who was in her prime. She didn't look like someone who'd been away for 5 years either. She was absolutely shredded. I think she made 135 even on weigh-ins. Of course, for non-Thai fighters, you can make that extra pound and weigh in at 136. But she came in professional, got the job done, and got the finish in round 3. So she got some good, octagon time in it. It's not like she came in 30 seconds in and out. She really made herself feel at home at the UFC Apex of that performance. And it's going to be interesting now that the Espen-led Kiesen fight's off tonight, or has been cancelled from UFC Vegas 32. What's next for her? I'd like to see her against Johanna Kunitskaya. I think that's personally a fight I think would be favourable for her, but obviously it'd be a good matchup. And Johanna Kunitskaya is top 6, top 7, maybe. I know Miesha Tate's 8, so I think Kunitskaya is 5 or 6. Obviously coming with that loss against Irene Aldana, who's obviously a fantastic matchup for Tate, but I think Aldana fights either Pena or Nunes next. You're probably going to, you'll be betting towards that being Nunes, but we never know in this game. And of course you've got Holly Holm and Jermaine Durandme. So I think personally Tate is one impressive performance, if not two, certainly off of that title bout and that rematch against Nunes. And personally, if I was looking at her, if I was a management looking at her performance, I'd say, right, let's get Kunitskaya out of the way. You was looking at Kunitskaya for your return match, and then let's have a look at, maybe Holm 2 or Jermaine Durandme, depending on where we're at in 2022, perhaps. But yeah, for Miesha Tate, fantastic to see her back. We needed it in the bantamweight division. We need to see someone who has that star power. We've got a lot of rising contenders, but similar to the heavyweight division, we've got, it's quite stagnant. Obviously, the champion is so dominant in Nunes that it's not really the division's fault. But we've got a lot of people that are maybe on their way out of the game, and some people that aren't quite in their prime. They still want to come up, and that could be the same can be said for heavyweight. We've got a couple of people that need to retire or coming up to the retirement age, point of their career, and we've got a couple of people that need 2, 3, 4 fights, 2, 3 years to really get into their prime before we start calling them, title contenders, you could say. But yeah, UFC Vegas 31 was a fantastic card, and I think we're going to see the same tonight at UFC Vegas 32. Of course, on paper these cards look a bit weaker than what we've been treated to, at least on the pay-per-views, and of course that seems to be the model right now. Give us 2, 3 fantastic fights on the fight night cards, and actually stack the pay-per-views, because that's where your money is from the UFC, because you get an audience, you get the pay-per-view revenue from that as well. So keep that stacked. Make sure people need to buy that almost, rather than putting 2 or 3 or 4 good fights in there, and with all due respect, 5 or 6 fights that people aren't as invested in, you could say. Tonight, obviously, to round out the whole card, you got Kyler Phillips against Rowley and Paiva. In the co-main event, you got Darren Elkins versus Derek Minor. You got obviously Barber Maverick. After that, Yanis Rick Costa opened up the main card. You got Punahele Soliano versus Brendan Allen. You got Ian Heinisch versus Nassourdine Imavov from France. You got Mickey Gall on the card against Jordan Williams. Obviously, Jordan Williams coming out of the Contender Series, I believe, as well. So a fantastic fight on that one. Julio Archer versus Andre Ewell. Andre Ewell is always in a fantastic fight, a fun fight, whether he's on the winning or losing side of the fight. So Jahari Eubanks against Ellis Reed, and Diane Bilbita versus Hannah Goldie. So again, not the greatest card on paper. If you're looking at it, you're probably thinking this one is maybe one I can miss if you're not an avid watcher of the UFC or MMA even. But these cards at the moment seem to be bringing the best highlights, you could say. A lot of finishes in the prelims, and fantastic action all around. So yeah, this definitely isn't one you can afford to miss. There's some strong narratives that are going to come out tomorrow from this fight card and from the fight nights, of course. And obviously the biggest ones, where is TJ Dillashaw at, and who will be fighting the bantamweight champion next? Will it be Cory Sandhagen or TJ Dillashaw? So yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to give this video a like and comment down below TJ Dillashaw or Cory Sandhagen. And of course, go follow us on socials at CageChat MMA. And I'll see you guys on the next video.